Hello, and welcome to the channel. My name is Beverly. Today we'll be looking into a topic that is both fascinating and a little bit unnerving for many of us: artificial intelligence. We hear so much about AI these days, and it's hard to separate fact from fiction. At this point, we stand at the prefaces. AI, once the stuff of science fiction, is very quickly becoming our reality. But lurking beneath the surface is still a primal fear. What happens when these machines become smarter than us? What becomes of human values? Will we then be rendered obsolete? These aren't just questions for futurists or philosophers anymore, but to every single one of us. And in this session, we'll confront these questions head on, and hopefully by the end of it, you'll find some comfort and not just fear. And with that, I'd like to introduce our special guest, CEO of SanctifAI, Nathaniel Gates, who will take us through the company's approach to incorporate humans in AI workflows.
Hi, Beverly. Thanks for having me. My name is Nathaniel Gates, and I'm the CEO and founder of SanctifAI, and I'm happy to sit down with you today.
Daniel, I just have to ask, why is SanctifAI?
Well, when we were considering what the name was going to be for the organization, the thought was something that kind of still identified what it was that our vision was, for our organization, but still had kind of a technology or an AI theme to it. And the concept of sanctify, and if you don't know the last two letters, instead of sanctify with a Y, it's sanctify with AI at the end. That obviously gives it, the AI, so everyone knows we're talking about a technology company. But the word sanctify, and the reason why we chose sanctify means to set apart. And it's usually used in religious contexts. If something is sacred or sanctified, then it's holy. But in this case, it's something that's set apart, and that's how we feel pretty strongly when it comes to human intelligence. And that might sound kind of weird considering we're an AI company, but we believe human intelligence is still sacred, right? Humans are holy, and human intelligence should be still in the conversation and part of the workflows within AI. And so that was always the mission of SanctifAI, and we just feel that name encapsulates both those reasons.
Mm-hmm. So, you know how obviously many people are worried about how fast AI is advancing. They're scared of job displacement and a loss of human control. And how do you envision the relationship between humans and AI evolving in the coming years?
Yeah, it's going to change a ton. In fact, it already has changed a ton, right? I mean, if you just draw a line at maybe OpenAI's release of ChatGPT 3.0 and then 3.1 and on, the explosion of how change was going to pour over the workplace or the home place or anywhere where work is done became very apparent, right? And it took very little time for people to be able to realize, holy cow, this AI is for real. It's very close to a human. I can ask it questions. It'll tell me jokes. It will solve problems for me. And then in subsequent releases and as subsequent other pieces of software could be added into it, you were able to give it tools and you were able to solve more complex problems. And at such a pace of change, you can draw a line and say, wow, what if I just fast forward in my mind, 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, how is this pace of change going to change everything? And it absolutely is going to change everything. It's going to fundamentally change the way that all of us work, the way that we do our current workflows, and what our jobs even are. Sometimes I'll reference the rise of the dot-coms and the rise of the internet back in the 90s. And within a room, you could say, who here's job is in one way, shape, or form dependent upon the internet? And everyone nearly in the room will raise their hand, right? And many of those jobs never even existed prior to the connectivity of the whole world, right? Yeah. And that internet created a whole new means of employment and a means of kind of standing on the shoulders of this technology to do new and great and wonderful things. And it's easy to say that about AI, that we'll be able to stand on the shoulders of AI and do new, great, and wonderful things, and there will be wholly new jobs and things like that. But that doesn't mean that's not going to cause pain and change, and that of course brings fear, right? Fear for the jobs that we have now, fear for how humans have always done work, and now AI, which can do it far more cost effectively, is going to be tasked to do that work first. And so that fear usually brings resentment before maybe sometimes the younger generation will embrace it and start exploring new paths and new jobs and things like that. So the fear is very normal, but it's not unique to AI. Every time there's some technological revolution, there's always the fear of the people who are entrenched in kind of the old ways there that need to be retooled and adopt kind of using these new technologies as tools for what's next, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Just going back to what you said. So, what do you think the skills are or qualities that you believe will become uniquely human and indispensable in the post-AI world?
Yeah, when we look at humans and we look at kind of what makes us human, we can look at things like our creativity, right, and our ability to apply ethics, right, or apply morals against a problem and come up with a solution that's a judgment not just based off of a pattern of previous examples, but through a lens of kind of what we'd call humanity, right? And things like that creativity and things like really that gut feeling lots of times that humans have that we use all the time to make decisions going through life. We that to some extent is trained in ourselves by how we were brought up, by the morals that were entrenched within us, right?
Also human nature, right? Yeah.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And so AI tries to replicate that. Does try to replicate that, but humans are really the ones who are always going to bring that litmus test of humanity at the end. And so then there's other examples where we will choose as a society not to use AI, right? We'll choose by a society that even though AI might do the big work, we want a human then to review and to be present and to bring that last mile, right, of service, because that's who we'd rather interact with. So, we're all pretty sure that the airplanes we're flying in all over the world now fly themselves, right? and autopilot and auto land and all these wonderful things. But who would really get on those airplanes today if there wasn't a pilot up front, right? We feel a great deal more comfortable knowing that there's a human with all their talents and all their experience, but also, maybe their flaws and their past that has trained them how to deal with stressful situations and things like that in the future, right? Yeah. And so in these scenarios where they may not require a human, we might require a human through compliance, right? And we see that in a number of different industries where compliance is a big reason why humans need to stay involved in AI requirements as well, or where regulatory bodies say a human has to review that tweet before that tweet goes out, right? Or a human has to review that bank transaction before an AI does that trade, right? So there's times where compliance will be the reason why humans are involved. There's times when creativity is the reason, but there's times when ethics and morality need to be in there as well.
Yeah, it's well said. And I think the next question is something most of us are worried about. Like, do you think AI will ultimately create more jobs than it eliminates, or is it inevitable that certain professions will eventually disappear?
Yeah, I think the answer to both is very true. Is yes. There are many jobs that are going to be inefficiently done by humans going forward, where AI will be able to accommodate those, right? And this is no different than in the past, right? I mean, when word processors came out, we no longer needed people to do copying all the time, and do mass copying. When the printing press came out, we didn't need people to start doing writing. Every time there's a technological revolution, there is a passing of the torch, right, of jobs. But the explosion and the proliferation of new jobs that are now able to leverage this technology and leverage this capability always happens. And you can look at every revolution before, and you will see examples of a proliferation of new jobs standing on the shoulders of these technologies. So the people that have these jobs today will be disrupted. But there will be an intermediary group who embraces them and is able to do their job using the tools of AI, right? And then there'll be a little farther downstream, there'll be a new group of people who leverage AI to do what those people used to do, right? And then they're able to do new and wonderful things because they have those tools. And that's something that we look forward to, and that's something that we dream about as far as, advancing as a human race with new jobs. But it's never fun for the people in the middle, right? For the people who have spent a lot of time, learning a profession or doing something exceptionally well, and now to see, a computer algorithm be able to do it very quickly.
Yeah.
What's different, though, Beverly, that's important about this technological revolution versus previous ones is previously technology would attack, manual labor, or people who are doing repetitive tasks, farmers or assembly line workers, right, or workers that were doing manual labor. In this case, what AI does exceptionally well is judgment. Okay, it's able to ingest a huge amount of context, and through the lens of its past training, project out a pattern of judgment, which is exactly what humans do, right? So think of it as like a doctor, for example. A doctor would, when he sees the patient's chart and he looks at the test results and he looks at the labs, he uses his education. Well, first let's start. He uses his aptitude. Turns out he might be a smart guy, right, to start with. And then he went to 15 years of schooling, right? And then he spent a lot of time in his field of study. And so he has a lot of history. He's seen a lot of things. And he has a lot of experience, and he's able to look at all these test results through the lens of that experience and that training and his base aptitude that he started with. And then on top of that, he can take that case to his fellowship, which might be 20 more doctors, and ask them, hey, have you guys seen cases like this? And his network might be pretty large, and they all look at that case, and together, collectively, they can speak into it, where they figure out a pattern of treatment plan, right? To say, hey, we think this is what you have, and we think this is the best course of action going forward. And that's the best way humans have done it for all of time, right? Now, in this scenario, instead of the aptitude being very strong, you have the aptitude being exceptionally high, the computing power of supercomputers, right? You have the experience, instead of it being 15 years of treating cases, it's all of the cases. It's all of the charts for that specific ailment or for those ailments, right? And instead of it being a network of 15 people, it's a network of 200 million cases that it has access to, right? So the amount of data that it's able to reach and use for establishing the pattern to come up with a treatment plan is going to eventually far surpass what we can do right now as humans, right? So these really high trained knowledge workers today are potentially more at risk than these repetitive workers that were at risk before in earlier technological revolutions, right? So if you think now, who are our knowledge workers? Things like lawyers and doctors and finance analysts and things that took where we had smart people who would look at a lot of data and come up with a decision, and we pay them a lot of money for that decision. Today, that's going to get disrupted.
Yeah. I mean, let's look at SanctifAI's approach a little bit. So the company's approach is basically incorporating humans more into AI workflows, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how does SanctifAI ensure that humans remain central in the decision-making processes? Yeah,
so that's something that we've been a part of for over a decade now. Mm-hmm. So SanctifAI is a spinoff of a company called Allegion, and Allegion has been in business for over a decade, doing high-scale training data for AI. And the way that training data would work is, a company would send us, huge amounts of their data. Maybe it's video data or spoken text or tabular data, and we would ingest it into our platform, and we would spread that work across thousands of workers simultaneously. And we do it using some different mechanisms to ensure very high quality coming out of the workers. So examples we would show the same task to 3 or 4 workers, and we would programmatically compare their answers. And if they all gave us the same answer, then we could pass that small piece of data as accurate, and with a pretty good chance of it being true, right? And then we change the scores of all of the workers continuously. And so it allowed us to be able to distribute work to a huge amount of workers, and know what workers were good at what type of work and what workers did an exceptional job. And so we knew how accurate our data was that we would give back to the customer. And so
it sort of addresses the fear of job displacements, right?
Yeah, we were creating thousands of jobs in the midst of this AI training boom, right? And so these thousands of jobs never existed before, right? And here are jobs that these were people who may have been displaced from what they used to do, and now they can use these tools to train and label this data and continuously improve these algorithms. And so that was kind of where we came from, and we have had this platform that allowed us to inject work, to send out work at very high scales to very large quantities of people. And those people come from all over and make up any number of specific roles and skill sets. Sometimes our customers would need doctors or radiologists to be able to look at MRIs, or sometimes they need linguists to be able to translate Korean into English. Sometimes they'd have very specific skill sets for what that workforce needed to have. And so we created this very large ecosystem of over 400 workforce providers, and thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands actually of individual workers did work within our platform for this purpose. And so,
That's great. I mean,
and when this new AI kind of revolution happened, it's like, well, how can we potentially offer this workforce to AI so that AI can utilize this workforce for the purpose of injecting human intelligence into their decision making?
Because that should provide some sort of comfort for people who's scared of their job being taken over by AI. I mean, it's a valid fear, right? And SanctifAI is able to address that.
Yeah, I mean, we've done it in the past, and we will continue doing it. There will be new and great jobs that will be exploding out there and proliferating that never existed before. Like, for example, you're seeing whole new jobs around prompt engineering. How do you prompt AI excellently? And there's a big difference between just typing something in a ChatGPT and prompting it specifically and very well. And engineers are having to change from how they used to do engineering and just coding all of to instead working in tandem and as a team with your AI coders. That's a whole new job that didn't exist before. Yeah. So there's definitely a transition of the work for how things have been done in the past to how things are going to be done. And we think pretty strongly a lot of it will result from the cooperation of human agents and AI agents. And we haven't really talked about AI agents yet. But what AI agents are is if you start with a brain, a language model brain like ChatGPT, okay? And then you give it a memory, okay? You give it the ability to remember things that it's talked about before. And you give it specific context data, maybe 100,000 medical records, right? Or 100,000 or a large amount of training data about a specific topic or something like that, And then finally, you give it tools. You give it the ability to reach into different systems to maybe do lookups in systems, or you give it a voice, or you give it these different tools that it can now interact with people and interact with systems. And then you wrap the whole thing with a role. And you say, you are a customer service agent for Hoover Vacuum Company. and in the role with the context and its training data, it's able to operate within that role with its tools, okay? Now, sometimes there's going to be, we believe, a great necessity for it to reach out to humans for all sorts of reasons. Like we talked about before, for creativity, for compliance, for complexity or decision making if it can't solve the problem. And what we want to do is be able to give these agents another tool. So they already have these different tools. We want to give them another tool, and that's a SanctifAI tool that lets them reach out to a human agent to solve a problem. And that human agent is up to the tool. Do they need an expert in vacuums, like we were talking about before? Or do they need an employee from the actual company to be able to approve what came out of the system, right? So when the agent wants to interact with humans, they would use human as a tool, which is a SanctifAI function, to allow it to reach out, and it would pass it into our platform. It would be distributed to that workforce. That workforce would complete the task. It would go back to the agent, and the agent would immediately continue with its processing. So we believe that interaction between a human agent and a machine agent is going to become a huge provider of work in the entire world. I think many people will be doing AI interaction full time as their job, where they're receiving compensation for every single interaction with AI that they have, where they might be interacting with thousands of AI agents throughout the day, and they're receiving compensation based off of their humanity that they can inject into those worker processes.
I mean, that's so great, right? Because we keep hearing about AI agents, and where does human come into play here? And I love how SanctifAI is able to address that relationship.
That's right. We've used the word agent for a long time. We know customer service agents. We know the agent is a worker on the behalf of somebody else. That's what an agent is, right? Well, this AI agent exists on the behalf of the company that owns it, but the human agent, that's their own, and they own it, and they are that agent, right? And so we believe that the AI agents will reach out to human agents constantly and continuously, creating a whole new economy of workers out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. So last question here. So what role do you think education and upskilling should play in preparing your next generation in the post-AI world?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And having a son in college and then two smaller kids, we're already asking ourselves that question, right? Not to mention our own employees. How do we re-educate our own employees in a post-AI world? Because we're there, right? We're already in this post-AI world now. I think it's important from a couple different vectors. One is maybe at a strategic level, choosing your educational path is going to be very important with an AI lens. Okay, am I going to go down a path of educating myself and training myself for a role, and will that role still exist 5 years from now or 6 years from now? Okay, am I going to do employee training, furthering employee training and onboarding for roles that don't exist? So for example, coding and engineering. Our computer science teams are going to change dramatically over the next 5 years. So do I want my son to become an engineer? Do I want my daughter to be a quality control engineer? I may not. I may say, hey, why don't you guys look at potentially how you could leverage, or how AI is interacting with engineering, and maybe look at your educational path that direction. So first, from an educational path, I would say, look at the career you're pursuing or the industry you're pursuing, and how is AI going to disrupt that? And are you pursuing a job that's going to be there by the time you're out there looking for work? So that's the first thing. And then secondly, it's how can I ingest and incorporate AI into my own workflows to do my own education better? I remember when I was going in high school and whatnot, we could use graphing calculators for the first time. And that was a big deal because my parents didn't have graphing calculators, and they probably weren't even allowed to use calculators. And here we are now able to use this tool. Yes, we knew how to graph, we could plot, but with a graphing calculator, we could do functions very quickly, and we could forecast things on functions, and it allowed us to kind of expand and go farther quicker because we had this tool set of a graphing calculator, right? And then now if you fast forward to my older son, when he was in school, he had access to Wikipedia, right? He had access to fantastic wealth of information on the internet, and the school had to wrestle with how much did we want to let them utilize the internet, and they came to kind of embrace Google Classroom. They came to kind of embrace these tools that the internet had to help foster education rather than losing education, right? And so now today we have these amazing but definitely altering tools that are out there, where you could potentially leverage AI to do all of your homework, for example. We have to police that, and teachers have to police that, but most likely teachers are going to be doing their lessons plans on ChatGPT, so it kind of goes both ways. And I think what you're going to see is an educational incorporation of chat, of AI, where the presumption is that students will be using AI, right? And students will be using AI, and teachers will be using AI. And the idea is more so than trying not to necessarily make sure that the child can do pattern matching around history or pattern matching around, diagramming a sentence. That might not be education anymore. What education might now be is, how do I clearly express an argument, right? How do I now clearly accomplish these things leveraging these tools of AI? So there's going to be new challenges and new opportunities, through rhetoric, right, and through these different mechanisms to improve. Yeah, exactly. It's gonna be rocky. It's going to be rocky for a while because we've got old education that's going to have to change quite a bit. And there's a lot of people think that education will actually look completely different. If you look at Khan Academy and what's come out of Khan Academy's collaboration with OpenAI and Google, with the ability to bring AI directly into the classroom, where every student has their own agent tutor. And think about that. Think about if you had a tutor, a hired tutor who was helping you the entire way understand concepts, learn concepts, that knew everything functionally, knew it all. But its job is not to tell your answers. Its job is to help educate you so you can understand how it works and how things come together. That's remarkable. That we would never be able to afford a tutor for every single one of our children, right? But now here's an opportunity to have that. That's a great example, and I think if you fast forward, you will see that sort of agent interaction, where the student has an agent that he uses for interaction for that job, and the teacher has an agent that she might use for interacting with those children, and the agents interact with each other. That's remarkable too. But we think that agent's interaction with the child and the agent's interaction with the other agents, all of those also open up opportunities for humans to interact with those agents as well.
Yeah, I think it's important.
Create jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm very excited to see how education is going to change. I think it would be a disservice to try to just say, hey, we're not going to allow AI within our school. I think that school will fall behind and ultimately be marginalized very quickly. I think universities that continue to try to teach using the Socratic method of a millennia ago are going to be disrupted very quickly. And it's these entities that are able to embrace these new technologies are going to be the ones that eventually have any meaning going forward very quickly.
Well, Nathaniel, this has been super great and super insightful. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much, Nathaniel.
Absolutely, Beverly. Thanks for having me on. We'll talk again.